authorization, conditional approval. This, of course, is India's indigenous vaccine candidate. But this move seems to have raised many questions and stirred up quite a controversy. What is this row about? Why was this given conditional approval? And what are the critics saying? Let's try and find out with Abantika Ghosh, who, as you know, tracks health for ThePrint, is leading our COVID coverage as well. Do start sending in your questions for government matters right away. Abantika, so let's break this down a little bit, because, you know, it's been just so much noise around these approvals and what has happened. So if you can just run us through the process, you know, on what basis were the approvals given, and then let's talk about the controversy.
So the approvals were given on the basis of the data that they have in front of them, non-peer reviewed, pre-print. But the data that the subject expert committee of the drug controller had in front of them were the phase 1 and a phase 2 trials, which were done in about 375 and 380 subjects each. And they also had immunogenicity data from preclinical stages. And these were done in mice, rats, rabbits, Syrian hamsters, where the vaccine was found to produce some amount of immune response. This is the data that was there in front, and one of the reasons why this vaccine has been approved, the government's position is that because it is an inactivated whole virus, it is more likely to be able to tackle the mutant UK strain than the others that are around. Because what happens is, if you imagine the virus as 100%, so the mutation may have happened in 1%. If by chance your vaccine targets that 1%, which is what is happening, most vaccines are targeting the spike protein, and the spike protein is where the mutation has happened, and that is what has made, and the spike protein is also the binding site of the virus to the cell, to the human cell when it is infecting. So, and that's actually what has made it better, a better transmission agent, basically, that mutation. Because the mutations have happened in the spike protein and vaccines are targeting the spike protein, some of them will need some amount of tweaking. For example, Pfizer has said we need 6 weeks to redo the vaccine for this strain. Now, the government's position, and this apparently came up during one of the task force meetings as well, is that because this is a whole virus, it is, so even if 1% has mutated, it has 99% of the virus, the rest of the virus to target. It can still generate an immune response because the rest of the virus is okay, and that's the virus you have introduced. That's the rationale of this.
Giving it approval.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, now let's move on to the controversy part. Why has it led to so many questions, so much skepticism?
Because we actually don't have data to show that this vaccine acts against the original strain also.
So the efficacy is not proven?
No, we have no data to show. Maybe it acts, but what if the efficacy is 45%? We don't have that data. So to say that just because this is a whole virus, it will act on the mutant strain, when you don't even have data to support the claim that it will act against the original strain, that's a bit of a stretch. And also, so science does not allow for such, this is a huge leap of faith. You don't know what will happen. You have like tiny, very, very tiny in terms of clinical trial terms. You have really small numbers in the first 2 phases. What's more, in the third phase, the company was supposed to do 25,800 subjects. Till December 13th, they had got, December 22nd, they had got just 13,000 subjects. And it's, I think, later that month, they said that 22,000 something subjects they have got. So which means you have not even got all subjects. Now, sources are telling us that the company has data for 24,000 people for the first dose and for 10,000 people for the second dose. So 10,000 people have received 2 doses, 24,000 have received one dose. So while that may prove your safety, it still does not prove immunogenicity. And a vaccine that has an immune response in a Syrian hamster may or may not work in humans. If that was the case, then phase 3 clinical trials wouldn't be needed. We could simply move from preclinical to phase 1, phase 2 safety, and then just simply roll it out.
Right.
That's not how it works.
So now if you were to compare it to the other vaccine candidate, which is Covishield, which is the Oxford vaccine, how do the two of them compare?
So Covishield has data. Covishield has another problem. Covishield data has that, that mistake, quote unquote mistake that AstraZeneca did when it did a half dose, full dose regime in the UK. And now the company is actually saying that don't do half dose, go with the full dose, but give the second dose at a bigger interval. So instead of 28 days, which is their protocol, which is the clinical trial protocol that has been submitted to the ICMR, which is the which has the clinical trial registry of India. Instead of doing 28 days, you give the second dose at maybe 2 months, 3 months, and you'll get a better response. But that is not something, that is not the data, that is not the protocol that they got approved.
Right.
So there again, there's a bit of a problem, but how it works is that if we give a bigger gap between the two doses, then for X number of doses available, so as the time goes, your availability will ease.
Right.
So for X number of doses available, you'll be able to vaccinate more people if you give that gap. But are we willing to do that? So far the government is saying we'll stick to 28 days, which means we are looking at, for the first set of priority groups, we are looking at 60 crore plus 10% wastage, about 66 crore doses of the vaccine. So
yeah, okay. So Preetam Jyoti Bora has the first question. Why not wait till phase 3 results are out before giving any sort of endorsement? Phase 3 trials are being done for a reason. The government is doing the damage and raising suspicion on themselves.
Right, and also more than that, you're already talking about vaccine hesitancy. If you do these kinds of clearances, vaccine hesitancy will go up. Plus, you have aspirations of being the vaccine suppliers to the world. So the question that Dr. Kang has asked, Dr. Gagandeep Kang has asked in an interview today is, how are we different from Russia and China? I don't know. That's not the kind of reputation you want to go in with into the international market, because this is pharma companies of India. India is called the pharmacy of the world. This kind of reputation will have long-term consequences, not just on the COVID vaccine, but for future pharmaceutical products coming out of India. It's a very serious thing.
Right. Okay. Shivek Kapoor, what is the difference in the trial progress for Sputnik V and Bharat Biotech vaccines? Why was Bharat Biotech approved even though Sputnik V has more data at this stage?
So Bharat Biotech is an indigenous vaccine. So there is no logical or scientific reply to this. I can only sort of do a conjecture.
Guesswork.
Yeah. So it's an indigenous vaccine. ICMR has been involved with the development of this vaccine from the very first. The vaccine, the vaccine isolate, the virus isolate on which this vaccine was developed, it came from the National Institute of Virology in Pune. Also, another very important consideration for this that people are, in the government are constantly telling us is that because it's a killed virus, it can do you no harm. It may or may not work, but it can do you no harm. But by that logic, even water does no harm.
Okay. Madhu Ranjan, isn't it approved only for emergency use? So if you can just quickly tell our viewers what emergency use authorization is.
Emergency use authorization, in this context, it's being said that we will roll out the serum vaccine first, and then if the COVID, the mutant strains go up, or there's a large number of cases in any place, then we will roll this out. That's what they are saying is the emergency use authorization. What clinical trial mode is again very fuzzy. Clinical trial mode, one thing that it means is that you will get informed consent, but there again there's a problem. If you're going to take informed consent from a 60-year-old who has not left his or her home in the last 1 year, and you tell them, do you want to take this vaccine or not, they will take the vaccine.
Right.
Anything to get out.
Right. It's an induced circumstance in that sense.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. This one is from, there was another question from Dr. Nofil also on phase 3 trial, which we've talked about earlier. Parth Malani, what do you think of a person holding the position of India's drug controller general commenting, saying it's 110% safe for a vaccine which has not even gone through its third stage trial? What is 110% safe?
Yeah, so I think that rationale again is that it will not do any harm.
Right.
But to talk in absolutes in science is always a problem. The first lesson that we were taught in biology is that 2 plus 2 will rarely be 4.
Yeah.
It will sometimes be 3.9, sometimes it will be 4.1. So, that's actually a very interesting thing about this whole vaccine development process, or even the entire COVID story in India, that we have repeatedly spoken in absolutes without adequate data. We have one day said this does not work, the second day we have said okay, this works, maybe it does work. So it's been the communication, the science communication has been quite problematic.
Right. Okay. This one is from Shivek Kapoor again. If a variation is made by a vaccine such as Pfizer for the mutant virus, will it need to go through complete trials again? What happens in case of flu vaccines that are updated annually?
See, that is another question we don't know about any vaccine now. How long does the immunity last? Do you need to do like another shot, another 2 shots next year? Do you need to do another 2 shots 6 months? No vaccine so far has that data. That is a gray area. We don't know how long the immune response will last, even without mutations. I am not even talking about mutations anymore. But how long the immunity lasts is, we don't know.
But I think the question is that if it has to be tweaked as per mutations, then does it have to go through the whole process of clinical trials again?
Ideally. Depends on how much you're tweaking, but ideally it has to be, at least the trial has to show that it has a immune response. That much it will have to show. Otherwise, how do you say that it works without a trial?
Right. Okay, Namra Patel, is Dr. Reddy's vaccine with Sputnik 5 going to be the most expensive vaccine in India? And if yes, why so?
No, I don't think. If Pfizer gets the nod, if Moderna gets the nod, because Pfizer has applied, it is stuck. But even if we leave alone Moderna, which is almost double Pfizer's price, but even if we leave that aside, Pfizer has applied. So that's $20. I doubt if Sputnik 5 will be
more expensive. Yeah. Right. In fact, Ranjan Prithvi has a related question. Is there a possibility to get one of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines in India on demand when you pay for yourself? So, instead of this government subsidizing or free-for-all vaccine program, is there a possibility that we can have access to these other vaccines if you're willing to spend on it?
As and when they get approved. Right now, the government is very clear that we want all vaccines that are available for the national program. Only after that. So Serum has been saying that it may be able to sell in the open market from March. Pfizer and Moderna, it's a little premature to discuss because Moderna has not even applied here. Pfizer, unless you want to take a flight to the US and do that vaccine tourism. But Pfizer has applied, but it's stuck because of some issues. So right now it's premature to say when you can do it, but yeah, theoretically it should be accessible. It should be accessible because I doubt if we are going to procure Pfizer for the national program. It's way too expensive.
Right. Okay, Namra Patel, the Serum Institute produced 50 million doses, which they could have produced more looking at the market, but they limited their stock because of competitive vaccines in India. Is that true?
Serum is actually now saying that they will be able to manufacture 100 million doses per month by February. So I suppose before the licensure and before they had a commitment from the government, and remember right now they are not allowed to export.
Right.
So right now it's only the government of India which is going to buy for them. So till the government of India makes that commitment in clear, probably it didn't make sense for the company, but now they are saying that we will push up our production. And so that's, if they're doing 100 million doses by February and from 50-60 million per month, say a month or a couple of months ago, then yeah, so they would be doubling their production.
Okay. All right. So before we close, Abantika, if you can just explain the rollout plan. We've all heard how people above 50 with comorbidities, etc., etc. There are all kinds of voices coming in. So what is the plan? What are the priority groups?
The first two priority groups are fairly simple to reach because we are talking about healthcare workers. Hospitals know who work with them. Government knows which are the health officers who are in the field. So all that is data that is going to be. So there is something called the CoWIN platform, which is a digital platform. So you log in, and then suppose you are a hospital medical superintendent. You just say that these are my healthcare workers, and some elsewhere in that same place, in the district magistrate's office, maybe they are putting all the names of all the health department staff who need to be vaccinated. So that is fairly simple. The next phase, even the frontline workers, that is also simple because you're talking about police, sanitation workers, all of that. You will have data. NCDs will, corporations will have data. The police will have data. All of that data is available. That's fairly simple. So basically, the officers, the agencies who employ these people will upload the data, and then they will receive messages.
Sure.
It gets a little more complicated with comorbidities and above 50. So right now we are planning to use electoral rolls, and till now there is no clarity on what are the comorbidities. We are talking about diabetes, hypertension, immunosuppression and all of that. But right now it's not clear how many comorbidities and which all comorbidities. Also diabetes. So I mean, what severity of diabetes are we looking at? Are we looking at every diabetic?
Right.
Or are we looking at somebody whose blood sugar is beyond a certain point? All those things will need to be clarified, and that clarity will probably come as we go along.
But isn't electoral rolls also a bit of a fuzzy sort of a database to use, because one, it applies only to those who are registered voters and who have to be necessarily citizens of the country. It's
right. So there will, at a later stage, right now it's not available, at a later stage there will also be an option of self-registration.
Right.
In which case, if you are a person who comes in any of these categories and who has not received the message, or who thinks that you have not been registered, you can simply go on this CoWIN website and upload. There are 12 listed documents, Aadhaar, PAN card, bank documents, passport, a lot of them. Just upload them, and then you register yourself. There's a authentication process. It can be biometric, it can be OTP, it can even be by your date of birth. So there are some authentication processes, and then when authentication happens, there'll be a green tick, and you can see that green tick has appeared. But that is not available right now.
That's
it is
on a later stage. All right. Okay, Abantika, thank you so much for explaining the controversy around Bharat Biotech's vaccine candidate and also the rollout plan that we've just discussed. Thank you for sending in your questions for Government Matters. Do keep subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook page, and also visit our website, theprint.in.